In this video we talk about Spring Meadow, the third game in the puzzle trilogy by Uwe Rosenberg, and the second that I play. I played Indian Summer, that you see here in the back. I still have to try the first one, Cottage Garden, but I definitely want to try it at some point because I liked both Spring Meadow and Indian Summer. They're fairly different, although if you just look at the components, you may get the idea that there are similarities. There are, but gameplay is pretty different, and I like both. Sorry for the spoilers regarding my conclusions. In Spring Meadow, you are allegedly going on a walk as the snow is melting and you see larger and larger sections of the beautiful green meadow, and there are furry little critters that jump around, and we'll talk about those later. I said allegedly that is the theme because in essence it is a pretty abstract puzzle game, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a puzzle game that has strong abstract mechanics, but at least also has some nice illustration that is pleasing to look at as you're playing the game and trying to form the puzzle. Without further ado, let's take a closer look at Spring Meadow. The game revolves around a pool of components such as these ones, these game pieces that will be used to form a puzzle on your personal board. They are different sizes, different shapes, and they have holes in them, which is important. And you can keep them in your box during the game, so when you need to draw random tiles, you simply look into the box and use the box as a randomizer as a game component. Then you have this board here, which will be filled up at the beginning of the game, which is where you store the game pieces that are actually available for the players to take and place on their personal board. You also have a signpost there, we'll see what that does, but for now it's important to note that the board is divided in 25 squares, so it's a grid of 5 by 5. Then we have these other game pieces here that represent the rocks. Basically, by creating certain configurations on your board, you'll be able to get rocks of size 1 or 2 or 3. You also have these other 3 here, or 4. It's important to take control of these small pieces because they allow you to fill in small spaces on your board that otherwise you were forced to leave blank between game pieces. And then we have these cute little rodents here, the marmots. A marmot basically is like a groundhog, just with a fancier name. And they are under the ground, and we don't want to bury them alive as we play the game. Finally, each player has a personal board such as this one. They're double-sided with different patterns of marmot holes in them. And, well, that is important, as you shall see. Now, at the beginning of the game, you place the signpost next to the board. And then what happens is that players alternate taking turns, and during your turn, you will select a piece in the row or column that the signpost is currently occupy. For example, right now it's my turn and I decide that I want to take this piece here and I add it to my board and I add it here. Now you don't have to attach and to place later following pieces next to your previous ones. You can place them somewhere else, but it's a bad idea because in order to score points you will want to place things as close to the bottom as possible and as solid as possible. You're basically trying to fill in your board starting from the bottom, one full line after the other. If you are covering a hole of a marmot, ideally you're going to cover it with a hole in the game piece, like in that case. It may be, however, that you're covering it with the actual piece, not with a hole. In order for you to be allowed to do so, you must have a marmot hole that has been already framed by another game piece. For example, in this case, I could do it, we can cover that one because that one is empty. But basically, as I am covering the that side of the tunnel, the poor marmot comes out and says, hey, what the heck is going on? What happened to that to the back door? So basically, when you cover one, you need to have another hole available, framed, and you place a marmot on it, and now it doesn't count as a cleared hole anymore, which is important for game purposes and game effects. Another important thing is if you place holes next to each other, that is when you get to acquire rocks. So 2 holes with 3 holes next to each other. Okay, with 2 holes, you get level 1 a 1 square rock. With 3 holes, a 2 square rock, and so on and so forth. Basically, it is 1 square less than the number of holes that you have there. And here I have 3 holes, so I'm gonna get a 2 tile rock, which I can place, say, here. And look at that, that's already helping me. The thing already looks better. The game continues like this. So players will take a piece from the row or column that the thingy, the signpost, is facing, and then you move it. Say next player takes this one, then you move it, next player takes this one. I think you see where this is going now. That player will take one, and then we wrap around, we turn around the corner, and now this is how we see how we take pieces. The game continues, I should say the run continues until the signpost is facing a line or column that has 0 or 1 game piece. At that point, you stop and you evaluate the players' boards to see how many points they have, how many points the players have. The players, when you evaluate their boards, will score 10 points for each complete line that they have, because a line is 10 squares, plus a point for each square that is covered in their first incomplete line from the bottom. So right here we have 10 points plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from that line. This is the case, I would have 20 points plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Plus also you get a point for each cleared hole that is in your pattern. Also, the turn whose player it is when we're scoring, since the player is not going to take their turn, they get a little consolation prize, which is a +2 points picnic basket. So you total all of the points and you compare. The player with the highest total gets a little pin as a reward for being such a, I don't know exactly what that means, a careful hiker. A hiker that does not murder marmots by burying them alive, a player that is able to clear the snow regularly all on one side and leave a nice clear path. Whatever it is, the player that scored the most points get that pin. You refill the board with random game pieces from the box or from wherever you're storing the extra pieces, and you repeat like this, moving, taking pieces, adding to your board, scoring from time to time until a player has earned 2 pins, and that player is the winner of the game. I definitely like Spring Meadow, and I think I like it better than Indian Summer. It is, in a sense, a cleaner design. It is a more economical design, and one that seems to have a more, how can I say, harmonious, linear but not bland progression. Indian Summer, as you're putting together the puzzle, but also you're collecting resources that then you're gonna spend to get certain advantages, and when you start spending those resources, then the game speeds up so fast that the last turn or two it's just people dumping a bunch, like an avalanche of resources into the general pool, resolving those effects. So the game has a sort of like really quick resolution that is very climatic, but it's so fast that it feels a little bit anticlimactic. Here in Spring Meadow, the game goes more linearly, but of course, after the first round, you have a pin, so I'm a little behind, and I want to try to do better. I'm trying to see what you're doing. I'm trying to see what happens. I still get all of the good things of puzzle games, such as creating my own puzzle, and the good things of some other puzzle games, which is trying to manipulate what you're gonna get, especially what you're not gonna get if I see that there is a piece that you really want, and maybe there is a way for me to stop that. So there are all of those elements there in a way that creates a sense of progression. I have 2 full lines, I need 1 more piece to complete that one. There is a sense of progression, the sense of tension, but you don't have an escalating towards the end that again is climatic. The paradox, it feels anticlimactic because it's too sudden. So you have more of a build-up. And Indian Summer, because of the tokens that you use and you take and you invest and you trade, sometimes it almost feels like a hybrid between a puzzle and a Euro game. And again, it's not bad. I reviewed Indian Summer positively. I enjoyed it. I think there definitely is a time for playing that game. But for a puzzle game in the purest sense, again, Spring Meadow is purer. Spring Meadow is just what it is. I am creating a puzzle. I'm trying to cover the area in a way that is as compact and thorough as possible. When I get a bonus, is a way of covering areas better. Is a way of getting more of those pieces. And I also like the challenge, the sort of like the way in which you have to build around those holes, and you need to be able to provide an access, so you need to fulfill a certain requirement before you build in another area, or you may be able to fit in such a way that a hole in a piece goes where a hole on the board is. That just adds the little extra challenge that makes it not just Tetris with cardboard tiles, but makes it a little bit different, while keeping it remarkably similar from the point of view of the mechanic. It's similar to the father or mother or grandpa, whatever the gender Tetris was, the ancestor of all or most board puzzle games. It is remarkably similar to that one, and yet it has its own personality. It feels different. The components are beautiful to look at, to manipulate, so production values are very high, as we've come to expect from Stronghold games. So this game definitely is within their standards, which are quite high. So in general, it is a fun puzzle game. Even played with 4 players, we didn't experience analysis paralysis. That is something I worried a little bit about, and you should always worry a little bit about it with puzzle games because it's perfect information, so the player may go through every possible option. But luckily enough, you have interesting options, but not too many. You have the option of which piece you're gonna get, but you're gonna have 4, 5, 3, 2, so not too many. And then you have the option of where to place it. So just a nice range of options, which is enough to make the game fun and interesting and intriguing, but not so much that players are very likely to be overwhelmed and become prone to analysis paralysis. So in general, Spring Meadow, it's a fun puzzle game. As a puzzle game, I find it better than Indian Summer. Indian Summer is more unique. Yes, this is something more of a classic feel to it, but I like its simplicity, I like its linearity, and definitely I enjoy playing Spring Meadow.